Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, and we return back to the comic books of 1979. In fact, it is our last piece of Star Wars media that is in 1979, and it is the Marvel Star Wars Annual #1. Now, just to give you a little bit of history, I guess, of what annuals are. Annuals were big stories, and Marvel and DC both did them. I figure. Seems like it's more so than DC. Marvel does. They were big in the 80s and 90s. In particular, being a Marvel fan, Marvel would put out stories, giant annuals like here's the wedding of Spider-Man or Peter Parker and Mary Jane. And so that was in the 80s. That was really big. And then you'll still see it occasionally from time to time. You don't see it a lot, but like here's a modern Spider-Man annual right here, just to, again, give you kind of a little bit of a look here. So they were really, really big, and Star Wars actually did some. Now, what's interesting here is that the annuals were not counted as part of the actual numbering of the series. So, for example, Star Wars is now 108 issues, right? Or the Marvel series 108 issues now, but it doesn't account for the 3 annuals that we had, and then the 4 comic adaptations of Return of the Jedi. So technically, it's more than just 108 issues, right? But it's not a part of the real count. So this is the same thing here. It's part of it. It's an extra thing, which is cool. So here's the cover here. I have it again. I have it collected in the trade long time ago. Dark Encounters. This is volume 2 of the Marvel series. So I can at least just show you the cover here. Unfortunately, it's not as cool because it's not the real thing, but whatever. So that being said, what are we looking at here? Well, the stories that came out in this annual, this was December of 1979. So it's a long hunt, and then there's also another story in there called A Duel of an Eagles. And sometimes annuals would do that. For example, it's in here. Usually, sometimes the annuals would be one big story, or sometimes there'd be like one main story, and then you'd have like sub stories in there. It seems like a lot of annuals would do that. So basically, the story is, without spoiling anything, there's a planet called Sky, where the carries there's the Majestic, or the Magistrix or something, sends Caudaman warriors to attack the planet Tyran. And then so Han recognizes this and decides to go confront Carries. And ultimately hilarity ensues. You'll have to read to find out all that happens. So just to kind of give you, I guess, some overall thoughts on this issue, there's one thing I really want to discuss here. And this isn't really a spoiler, but Anakin and Vader are considered or talked or referred to as 2 separate people. But to be fair, though, we didn't know that they were, two or the same person in 1979. We thought that they were 2 separate people. And to be honest, though, it does kind of work because in the Star Wars universe, it is kind of, I think that's kind of the cover-up story, is that Anakin was died defending younglings at the Jedi Temple. I think that's the official cover-up story of what happened to Anakin Skywalker. There's a whole thing there of, you could talk about like what happened, like why the Republic loved Anakin and all that stuff, which is, it might be an interesting Star Wars talks or something like that. But, so, I mean, it kind of fits, I guess, in the in-universe thing, but it's just kind of interesting that not only is it in-universe, but it's also, in in our world. We didn't know that yet. Audiences would find out in a couple of months in 1980 when Empire Strikes Back would come out that Vader and Anakin were the same person. So it had a more recent impact on the expanding universe, which is kind of interesting. If you've read the Lost Tribe of the Sith stories, and in fact, it would be in the omnibus copy that you're going to want to check out. So if you've read The Knights of the Lost Tribe of the Sith, this is the collected short stories, which I would recommend picking this up because this is going to be probably the best way to get all these short stories. But there are some connections in here, but more so, if you look into the Lost Tribe of the Sith comic books from Dark Horse, we actually get a connection to this annual, which is pretty cool. This was written by John Jackson Miller in a couple of these issues here. And we get Emma 5 from Sky, the planet Sky, which is really cool. There's a reference to that annual of Star Wars, which, again, another amazing connection in the expanded universe, right? That's one of the reasons why we love it. I love finding all these connections. In fact, I didn't even find out about this one on myself. I had to hear someone else tell me about it, and then I had to go back and check it out. I didn't even know about this connection. So, again, just another really cool thing about the expanded universe is how many pieces of connection there are. It's so cool. So, anyways, to conclude this, this whole thing, is this essential? Is this an essential read to read, annual number 1? Sadly, no, it really is not an essential read. I do think it's recommended for people who are reading the Marvel series, but just, is it a huge thing in the expanded universe? No. Even though it does reference Lost Tribe of the Sith, it isn't an essential thing to do, and I really do like the series, but it does have some issues. It does have some things that are going to impact some stuff, but it not it's not too big. And honestly, like I said, if it's Lost Tribe of the Sith, you're not going to miss much when you read this. So, anyways. That is all the time I have today, folks. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time with another episode of the Star Wars Library. May the Force be with you.